Okay, so I'm going to be talking about web analytics analysis. As Alex said, I'm going to be talking about how to find low-hanging fruit and A/B test ideas. I'm going to focus on Google Analytics just because it's probably the most universal of all of the platforms. Most people listening have Google Analytics and they use it regularly. As you can see, I have a lot to go through, so I'm going to move pretty quickly, but hopefully I can catch up on any questions later on or via Twitter. So this is one of my favorite quotes. It's something that Pep, who founded CXL, said to me or shared with me on the first or second day of working there. So you don't have generic problems, you have specific problems. And that's really guided how I've learned about digital analytics. I'm not interested in solving generic problems. I'm interested in specific problems, which means I need to dig into my own data and not rely on data that I might find in a case study or data that I read on a blog. You know what I mean? My specific problems and questions can only be answered with my specific data. So I'm really going to go through two aspects of the ResearchXL model, which is just our conversion research model that we use. I'm going to go through web analytics analysis, and then I'm also going to touch on technical analysis a little bit, because to me, they kind of go hand in hand. And for the technical analysis, you're mostly using Google Analytics as well. So getting into the technical side of things is cross-browser testing. So in Google Analytics, to get to the screen you're seeing, you're going to go to Audience, Technology, and then Browser and OS. And pretty much throughout the whole presentation, I've switched from the default data view to the comparison view, which gives us this neat little red and green chart on the side there. And what it is just bounce rate compared to the site average. You can use any metric that you want to use. Conversion rate, revenue would be great as well. And you can see here that I have all of the different browsers. It ranked in terms of how many sessions come through via those browsers. So what you can do is you can click on any of those browsers and you'll pull up something that looks like this. And we want to do that because we want to always compare performance within the same browser family. So we don't want to be looking back at Chrome versus Safari or Chrome versus Firefox. We want to drill down into one browser and look at the different versions. So the middle version here is one that we could start with. And what you can do when you identify a problem like this is use something like browser stack, which is kind of replicating the experience that the people coming in this browser version are going to see. And you can use that to figure out what might be causing that 12.9% decrease in performance. Cross-device testing is very similar. You're going to go to Audience, Mobile, and Devices. Again, I've switched to the comparison view. And again, I'm going to focus on comparing within the same device family. So looking at the Samsung devices, see that the Samsung SMB312E, catchy name, is performing significantly worse than all of the other Samsungs. But again, I'm not going to compare a Google Nexus to a Samsung. And again, you can use various tools online that will replicate the experience if you don't have that device on hand. And since there are so many, that's unlikely. So just before we get into speed analysis, I want to address the fact that the mobile experience is very different. Intentions are different, motivations are different, friction is different. So a good desktop UX might not necessarily be a good mobile UX. And that's very important, especially when you're considering device testing, to make sure that you're not thinking, okay, well, just because this looks like the desktop means that it's a good experience, because what's necessary for a good experience on both is very different. So getting into speed analysis, you're going to see two main metrics when you're looking into this, and it's page load time and page interactive time. Page interactive time is the one you care about. Page load time is actually just seconds until every element on the page is loaded, which is really significantly less important than seconds until the site is usable. So that's what your users are judging your page speed by, not page load time. This is kind of a rule of thumb. Don't take it as a hard and fast rule, but generally if your site loads in 3 seconds or less, you're golden. You're not going to need to do too much. Of course, a faster site is always good. But you might not see as big of an ROI as, say, somebody who has a site that loads in over 7 seconds. They're likely going to see an increase in conversions just due to the fact that their site is now loading faster. So to check out pages that might be loading slow, go to Behavior, Site Speed, and Page Timings. Again, I've got the comparison view, and you'll notice I have Document Interactive Time up there compared to the average. And I'm sorting it by page views. So now I'm seeing my most visited pages and how fast or not fast they're loading. And then I can go through systematically and take those pages and put them into page speed insights, which will basically analyze the page and give me some insights into why it ended up be loading very quickly. And at that point, if it were me, I would just pass it off to a developer or somebody on the tech side of things. They're gonna be able to run with it and fix it a lot faster than you. And you know, page speed insights isn't perfect, so they'll likely have some additional insights. So now we can get into the actual web analytics analysis section of the ResearchXL model. And I'm gonna really focus on how to make the data that you have usable and useful. A lot of people kind of end analytics at going into Google Analytics and seeing how many sessions they had last month, reporting it to their boss or their boss's boss, or even just reporting it that doesn't actually make it to any sort of boss, and then not coming back until next month. So hopefully we can change that. The first step is really to start with a question or a specific problem. That's really going to guide your investigation to analytics. If you don't start with a problem, you're not going to find the answer or find the solution. The best way to think about a good question to ask when you're going into analytics is, what will you do with the answer? So if the answer is nothing, then it's probably not the right question to be asking, because all of your answers should be really actionable and you should take that answer and do something with it to improve your site. So before you get to really analyzing anything, you want to make sure that your Google Analytics is reporting correctly. Honestly, this is really common that it's not reporting correctly. So definitely take the time to do this. Even if you think it's perfectly set up, it's probably not perfect. Make sure that you're collecting all of the data you need. Make sure that you can trust that data. Make sure nothing is broken or tracking incorrectly. Some common problems that you're probably going to run into might be missing from Google Analytics. The best way to address this is to use a checker to make sure that the code for Google Analytics is on every page that it should be on. You can also go through and make sure that you're using the latest Google Analytics code. Some people are still using a really old version of it, and it messes up the reporting a little bit. For number two, data is different in the shopping cart tool than it is in Google Analytics, and this is especially important for anyone in e-commerce. It's actually a really common issue, and usually it can be solved by looking at potential installation issues. If you set up your shopping cart tool midday, that can sometimes skew your Google Analytics data. If the two are operating in two different time zones, again, that can be causing problems. And then three, you want to make sure cross-domain tracking is working. If it's not working, then information is not being passed to every domain, which means you're not tracking your users from the beginning to the end of the funnel. And I wrote an entire article on Google Analytics Health Check. It's really intensive, and I got a lot of advice from Analytics and PEP as well. So if you want to check that out, it's just at this link. And then you can really start getting into it. You can start with the highest value pages. So that's either your high volume, low value pages. So that would be like an old blog post that you wrote that gets a ton of organic traffic, or your low volume, high value pages. So that would be like your checkout page. I like to start with the former. So here in a screenshot, I have, again, the comparison view enabled. And I have page views and bounce rate. And I have an advanced filter on, and that's just to filter out some of the lower traffic pages. So I'm not using anything with too small of a sample size. And we'll see right away that page 3 is a high traffic page that has a very high bounce rate. So we want to look into that page and start investigating why that might not be performing as well as others, especially since 21% is nothing to overlook. And then we get into 404 pages and broken links. People know these are bad. They know they're bad for SEO. They know they're bad for UX. But very few people do anything about it for the most part. So what you can do is you can go into Google Analytics and you can search page not found or whatever your 404 page is named. Then you can click on that link and you're going to get a list of all of the pages that are creating 404s. And you can just go through systematically and fix them. You can also use a secondary dimension. And you can figure out exactly what sites and what links are referring to those pages. So that's helpful if you want to go reach out to people and let them know, if you want to change internal links as well. Then we get into auditing your funnel. The biggest thing here, this is the funnel visualization report in Google Analytics. And the biggest thing to know here is that the further down your funnel you are, the smaller the necessary impact. So say we increase the conversion rate at the add to cart by 1%. That's great. But of course, it would mean more if it was a 1% increase in the review order page. Then you also have the goal flow report, which I personally like better. I think it's more flexible. You can apply advanced segments to it. You can use data comparison. And it shows like the actual flow that people are taking versus the funnel visualization, which shows the ideal flow that they would take, right? It's what you expect them to take. So this can often give you a bit more insight. And then you also have the reverse, the reverse goal flow, which you'll see in the far right corner here. We have goal completion for goal 1. And then prior to that, you have the last 3 steps that they took before they completed that goal. So often you're going to find funnels and flows that you didn't even know existed because it wasn't what you intended, but it's what people ended up using. And then the last thing in terms of looking into your site is internal search. Internal search is like a gold mine of insight. So if you have search enabled on your site, you can look at exactly what people are looking for and also how good you are at delivering what they're looking for. So I'm using the time after search metric, and I'm comparing that to the site average. The higher that is, the more likely it is that they found what they were looking for after they searched for the term. And you can use it for everything. You can use it for inventory if you're an e-commerce site. You can use it for SEO. You can use it for blog topics, just about anything. And then the last thing is to make sure you're segmenting your data. So whether you're segmenting it by converters versus non-converters, new versus returning, the list literally goes on and on and on. But unless you're slicing and dicing your data, you're not really getting any insights out of it. Just looking at the surface level reports isn't going to take you very far. And again, I actually wrote a full article on this. I could have written 5, so it's also just a little bit of an overview, but I think that you guys might like it. And last but not least, CXL Live is coming up in April in San Antonio. We created a coupon code, so if you guys use the code Digital Olympus, you'll save $249 on your ticket.